In a world where humanity had not learned to lie, deception, flattery, or made-up stories did not exist. People always spoke the absolute truth, no matter how harsh it might be.
No, I'm not sick. I just hate it there.
In this world lived a plump little man named Mark, whom everyone considered a failure. However, his fortune would change the day he told his first lie. Mark had asked a woman named Anna out on a date, and when he picked her up, she bluntly told him everything she thought about him, declaring the date to be a foolish idea. Initially, she had agreed because she couldn't find a suitable man, so she decided to try her luck even with someone like him. They went to a restaurant. Mark once again heard everything Anna thought about him when her mother called to ask about the date.
No, not very attractive. No, doesn't make much money.
Later, he walked her home. She said she had a good time, but needed to sober up to reflect on it, promising to write to him the next day. Films in this world were documentary, based on real historical events. Mark was working on a screenplay about the 14th century. However, his previous works had not been well received, and the century itself turned out to be dull. Eventually, he was fired. Sobering up, Anna messaged him saying, "Leave me alone, chubby. We're not on the same path." The next morning, upon learning about Mark's dismissal, the landlord came early and, finding out that the tenant couldn't pay $800 for the next month, gave him a day to vacate. There was nothing to do but for Mark to go to the bank to withdraw his last $300 to move his stuff out. He hadn't yet figured out where to. The bank's computers were down, and the teller asked him how much he would like to withdraw. Mark hesitated for a moment. Something clicked in his brain, and he said, $800. The woman suddenly announced that the computer was back up. She checked his account and saw only $300, but assuming it was a system error, she gave him the desired amount. Mark paid his rent and was ecstatic because he had invented something nobody had even thought of. He tried to explain it to a friend and a bartender, but it wasn't that simple. And how can you explain something that hasn't been invented?
I'm black.
I knew it.
Oh, I'm an Eskimo.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I've never seen a black Eskimo.
He spoke of things that didn't exist, but these two believed everything. He then asked what they would do if they could do anything they wanted. Almost in unison, they replied, "Sleep with girls."
I would touch girls' boobs.
Yes.
Mark stepped outside and noticed an attractive girl. Right away, she told him not to even try approaching her. He claimed the world would end if they didn't sleep together. It turned out to be too easy. Now, he wanted to make some money. Drunk Greg got behind the wheel, and they drove to the casino. On the way, a police officer stopped them. Greg blew into the breathalyzer, and the officer immediately began to arrest him. Mark intervened. He claimed that Greg hadn't drunk at all. The officer believed him, apologized profusely, and let them go. They arrived at the casino. Mark used deceit and tricks to slightly bankrupt them. Returning home, he encountered his neighbor, a perennial loser who talked about suicide every time they met. Previously, he had overdosed on pills, but as we see, unsuccessfully. Today, he decided to try hanging himself. Mark told him not to do it, promising that things would get better in the future. Noticing his neighbor's spirits lifted, Mark began wandering the city, telling people in need of support kind words instead of harsh truths. He helped a homeless man by taking a decent sum from the bank. In the evening, he scheduled a date with Anna. Initially resistant, claiming it was pointless, Mark managed to persuade her to meet for a brief encounter. On TV, they were showing another historical episode scripted by Brad Kessler, a smug upstart from Mark's former job. Determined to outdo Brad, Mark decided to write the best historical scripts. He then aged sheets using coffee and presented the writings to his boss. He claimed that after being fired, he wandered into a desert and found a 700-year-old chest containing a manuscript about people from Mars, Babylonians, naked Amazonians, and an interplanetary wedding. Everyone was thrilled with such a plot. It was a sensation. Mark began working on the screenplay. The evening concluded with his date with Anna. He proposed to her now that he had become successful, but the girl said she didn't want chubby children with potato noses. Mark received a call from the nursing home where his mother was. She had suddenly taken ill, and the doctor said she would pass away within a few hours. She feared being alone after death, but Mark comforted her, saying that after death, you go to the best place where your loved ones are nearby, surrounded by love, and it will continue forever, and everyone gets their own mansion. Upon hearing these words, the woman passed away, leaving the doctors astonished and urging Mark not to stop and to continue telling more. He spent the night at Anna's, falling asleep on the couch, and when he returned home, reporters and around 100 people awaited him, curious about what happens after death. Anna arrived, having watched television, where all channels were discussing the afterlife, information that Mark possessed. She pressed him for what he had told his mother and ordered him to tell everyone about it. Throughout the night, he pondered what to tell people from all over the planet, as the whole world awaited some information about the afterlife. And finally, at dawn, Mark went out. He told them that in heaven, there is a person who oversees everything, responsible for all the good and bad happening here, and he decides who dies. After death, a person goes to the best place in the world, surrounded by family and friends. Each receives their own mansion. If you commit 3 bad deeds, you end up in the worst place. He was interrupted by people's questions. What deeds are good and which are bad?
Is it bad to wear pants?
Oh, what the...
Mark's life changed. He became the person of the year according to a prestigious magazine, bought a mansion, hired a writer, and dictated news scripts endlessly. With Anna, they grew even closer. She even confessed her love to him, but they never started dating. She constantly mentioned genetics and chubby children. Anna had a date with Brad Kessler, and the man wanted to win her over just to spite Mark. After people learned about the afterlife, nothing fundamentally changed, but in some places, it got worse. The homeless man sat in his usual spot, just with a different sign. People became lazier because many dreamed of eternal life in their mansions. Mark's friends also insisted on this. Why change anything if eternal happiness awaits later? Until then, you can drink, thereby shortening life and getting to your mansion faster. Time passed. Anna came to Mark to hand him an invitation to her wedding with Brad. He begged her not to marry. She sang about genetics again, and Brad, in this case, was the best option. A little later, she saw a chubby guy being bullied by hooligans. The girl dispersed the troublemakers and noticed that the chubby guy turned out to be quite a cute boy. Greg came and, handing Mark a razor, said that not everything was lost yet. They went to the church, and he managed to have his say. Since she is happy with Mark, why marry Brad? And how will Brad's children be better than Mark's? People started asking him what a person in heaven wants. Anna was also curious about this, but he didn't lie and left the church. Anna ran out and asked again what a person in heaven wants. Mark replied that there is no such person, and he made it all up just to somehow calm his dying mother, and it went from there. After that, Anna suddenly said she wanted chubby children with potato noses.
I'll give a little bit.
Several years passed, but neither Anna nor anyone else understood where Mark got all this information from, as they never learned to lie. Indeed, it was passed down genetically.
It tastes so good, Mommy.